Worshiping God is something that we do individually, of course. But worship is also something that God designed to be done among other people and alongside of other people. We see that in Deuteronomy chapter 12 as God is in the middle of giving instructions on what worship is supposed to look like when the Israelites get into the Promised Land. And he's talking about special meals that they would eat together while they were in the process of worshiping and offering sacrifices. And he lists a number of different individuals that would be celebrating together as part of worship. He says he lists you, the person that he's talking to, but then he says your sons and your daughters and the men who work for you and the women who work for you and the Levites. So those are the individuals that he listed in that group that would be worshiping together and enjoying a meal together and rejoicing together and praising God together. And then in the very next verse, he circles back to that list and he says, but make sure you don't neglect. Which one do you think he would have singled out there? You, your sons, your daughters, the men who work for you, the women who work for you, and the Levites. He said, make sure you don't neglect the Levites. And why would God feel that it was necessary to emphasize the Levites to make sure that the rest of them didn't neglect the Levites? Maybe because the Levites knew how it felt to be neglected. Their lives were a little bit different than the others. They didn't have any allotment of land that was waiting for them in the Promised Land. They didn't have any inheritance that was waiting for them. Their lives entirely depended on the gifts that were given to the temple. That's how they ate. That's how they paid their bills. They had to rely on others, and maybe because they had to rely on others to take care of them, it was sometimes easy for those others to neglect them or to not prioritize them, and God wanted them to be sure that wouldn't happen. He singled out the Levites because they probably knew how it felt to be neglected. And I bet you do too, in some way, in some relationship. God didn't design us just to worship together, but to go through life together. And of course, you could say that the life of a Christian is one whole act of worship. That's very accurate. But he designed us to go through life shoulder to shoulder with others, which means that we feel lonely when we don't. We feel neglected and maybe even hurt when someone who was supposed to be there for us wasn't. When somebody made a promise to be good to us, to love us, but then they broke it. Maybe you feel neglected just within society as this group or this person or that type of person is being highlighted as having significant needs, but nobody's asking you how your day is going or how they can help you or what it is that weighs down your heart or how they can be there for you. And so you feel neglected, which is why it's really good news that God didn't neglect the Levites. He saw them. He saw their needs. He saw the ways that they had been overlooked. Just as he sees you. He sees your needs. He sees how you've been neglected. He sees how you've been overlooked. He knows how much that hurts. We know that. The reason he knows that is because the way that he was determined to make sure that your needs would never be neglected was to come down to earth himself and feel neglected as he hung on a cross, as people who had all sorts of good things that they could have given him. Help, support, encouragement, words of praise and affirmation. They weren't there. They held him back. And Jesus was neglected. He knows how you feel. We feel neglected when that happens, reluctantly. We never want that to happen. But Jesus felt neglected willingly because he wanted you to know that when it comes to God's attention toward you, you will never be neglected by Him. He sees you too, and He is always there for you. So rest well tonight, my friends.